Welcome to Reaper's Creepers. Step into the shadows, where tales of the unknown unfold. Relax, listen, and drift into the dark. The wind roared outside Rusty's, shaking the warped shutters of the weathered tavern. The neon "Open" sign hummed faintly as I pushed through the door, its familiar creak slicing through the low buzz of thoughts in my head. Inside, the air hung heavy with the stench of stale beer and wood smoke, a dive where stories stuck to the walls like the grime on the bar. The place was deserted, though it wouldn't close for another hour. It had been a week since I had last been here, since Lila's voice whispered on the wind, fading into the Ducati's turn signal flash at dawn, leaving me with a head full of questions and a jacket coated in red dust that reeked of stale perfume. Her words haunted me. You truly see me. Was I losing it? My thoughts were cut off by a familiar voice from the bar.
Well, I'll be damned. Thought you'd ridden off for good, kid. Where the hell you been? You're looking better,
Adam said, less worry on his face than last time. He didn't call me bro, which was a relief. I knew he only used that when he was pissed. Thanks, Tex, I replied, pulling up a stool. The vial of red dust in my pocket pressed against my thigh, heavy as a brick. Needed to clear my head. Been spending time out in the desert, I said, settling in. Adam raised a bottle of whiskey, eyebrow cocked. No, I answered his silent question. I've got questions. He nodded, a knowing glint in his eyes.
Figured as much,
he said, turning away. I watched him stride to the door, methodically pulling the string of the open sign and latching the front door, a practiced ritual. On his way back, his gaze locked onto mine, unwavering. He grabbed the remote, shutting off the TVs. You didn't need to close up, it could have waited, I said.
My office, kid,
he replied, brushing me off, heading to the back room. I took a deep breath, got off the stool, and followed. For over an hour, Adam sat and listened to my story. Lila, the Norton, the graveyard, the crash site she'd shown me in the fog. His face was a mask, no trace of intrigue, judgment, or surprise. His stoicism, forged from years of hearing confessions to brutal crimes, was downright intimidating. He barely spoke, just nodded occasionally. Just figured you deserved to know and that I ain't lost it. Yet, anyways, I finished, my voice quieter than I intended. Adam stared at me for what felt like an eternity before speaking.
Your father was special, Riley,
he said, glancing at a framed photo on the wall. Him and Dad, young and sharp in tailored suits, G-men in their prime. I always loved that picture.
He didn't lose his mind, he let his mind consume him. His powers of perception always spooked me. It wasn't natural, kid,
he continued, turning back to me. Just then, an old desk lamp in the corner flickered, its bulb buzzing erratically, like a trapped moth. I froze, heart racing. Was this real, or was I cracking like Dad? Get it together, Riley, I muttered under my breath, hoping Adam didn't hear. I'm not my father, Adam, I said, too defensive, forcing my focus back to him. He raised a single eyebrow, staring through me, oblivious to the lamp's flicker.
Kid, there was nobody with you at the bar that night,
he started, but I cut him off. I know. His eyebrow dropped, his whole brow furrowing into an angry scowl.
Did you know that at the time or later, during your sabbatical in the desert?
He asked, his tone sharp.
'Cause you literally told me to get lost. Your date was going well.
Frustration and a hint of venom edged his voice. He meant the code I'd used last time. Smile and wink, sunshine and rainbows. When I thought Lila was there. I know, I said, frustration seeping into my voice.
You know what? That it was in your head at the time, or that you said it,
he pressed, impatience growing. Both, I shot back. I wasn't sure at the time, but I had to test it, to be sure she wasn't actually there. Does that make sense? I blurted out, exasperated. Adam shook his head in frustration.
I'm not in your head, Riley. Spit it out. Make me understand.
I can't fully explain it, Adam, because I don't fully understand it myself. Either she's real or a hallucination. And before your head explodes, hear me out. She isn't real, in a sense that you or I fully understand. But real, I explained, stumbling over my words.
A ghost, Riley?
He replied, almost mockingly. No bullshit, Tex, I answered, dead serious. We stared, eyes locked, each waiting for the other to move.
You said you have questions,
Adam said, breaking the standoff. I do, I replied.
Shoot,
He said. My father, when did it start for him? I asked. He took a deep breath, as if retrieving old files in his mind, then exhaled slowly.
He always had it, Riley, but it really started to consume him around the same age you are now. Whatever it was, he couldn't shut it off. It drove him mad. No amount of distractions or self-medication was enough.
He explained.
Like I've told you before, he had access to information. Unnatural perception. He knew things he shouldn't. He was in control until he wasn't. Like a faucet that wouldn't shut off.
Kind of like Lawnmower Man, I added, trying to frame it.
Whatever,
He grumbled, dismissing it. The lamp kept flickering, distracting me. Did he ever mention ghosts or anything like that? I asked, prompting a slight eye roll.
No, I wouldn't have believed him even if he did.
He answered. His words hit hard. Not what he said, but the realization. Adam was a grounding factor for Dad. Kept him anchored in reality, probably kept him sane longer than he'd ever know. I wouldn't respect you if you did, Tex, I replied, catching a hint of suspicion in his face. I mean it, I assured him. You're grounded in reality, not convinced of anything, unless you can prove it. Skeptical, yet open-minded enough to understand there's things beyond our comprehension. His suspicion confirmed, he chuckled.
Kissing my ass ain't gonna lower your tab, kid.
Of course not, I replied with an innocent smirk. Dad, though, he appreciated it, respected it, kept him sane for a long time, I continued, dead serious, wiping the smile off Adam's face.
Don't open that spigot, Lawnmower Man, or whatever metaphor you prefer, Riley. You get me?
He said, gruff but concerned. I have to, Tex. I don't have a choice, I stated.
I probably wouldn't respect you either if you didn't.
He replied, softer now.
But personally, I'd stick to wrenches, not hunches, if I were you.
I nodded, the vial in my pocket feeling heavier. The lamp had stopped buzzing, but Lila's words lingered in my mind. You truly see me, Riley, even how I am now. That's amazing. What did she mean? Was I truly seeing her ghost? My thoughts were interrupted when Adam's printer spat out a blank piece of paper. I watched his reaction, annoyance, like it wasn't the first time, a recurring glitch. The lamp, I said, breaking his moment of irritation.
What about it?
He replied. What's wrong with it? I pressed.
Hell if I know, just started acting up today.
He answered. The printer, how long's that been going on? I asked.
Don't start, kid. It's probably just bad wiring in this joint,
He said, dismissive. Probably, I agreed, keeping my tone casual. How long, though? I've had issues at the shop, too. I continued as nonchalant as I could. He looked up from the printer, doubt in his eyes. No bullshit, Tex. How long? I asked again.
Little over a week.
He admitted, knowing where I was headed.
Go on, spit it out, kid. I'm not getting any younger and it's getting late.
He urged. On a hunch, I asked, was anyone asking about me here last week? He stared at me, curious.
You mean other than the usual degenerates?
He said, acknowledging where I was leading. Yes, I replied.
There was a fella asking about you. Wanted to know how good of a bike mechanic you were.
He said, dismissive. I figured the Norton's owner might have encountered Lila here. That wasn't a surprise. What did he ask about? I pressed, seeing where this led.
Not much. Just said he'd heard you were good with trouble bikes, and I confirmed you were. Gave him your shop's location, and that was it.
He answered. Now I knew the Norton's owner had been here. But the real question was, who else might have seen Lila? You still keeping footage from the cameras? I asked, already knowing the answer.
You know I do, kid. You want to cut the shit and tell me what you really want to know?
He asked, unamused at being interrogated. I hadn't described Lila in my story on purpose. I didn't want to play that card until now. Women. Any new faces the last few weeks? I asked, knowing damn well nobody walked into this dive without him noticing. His years of training and experience wouldn't let him miss sizing up everyone he'd ever seen.
There's always new faces, Riley. You asking for someone specific?
He asked, knowing exactly what I was after.
Your father would be proud, kid,
he said with a slight smirk, knowing I'd trapped him. After several minutes of describing nothing noteworthy, he mentioned a loner. Her. I zeroed in before he could continue.
Well, she's come around a couple nights over the last few weeks. Kinda sits around, people watching,
he explained. Does she ever talk to anyone? I asked, keeping my tone calm, flat, not wanting to show my hand.
Not that I ever saw, but she did ask me a few questions about you. Is that what you've been getting at, kid? This ain't my first rodeo,
he answered. Possibly, but that would be a real woman, not a ghost, I replied bluntly, cutting on purpose. What did she ask about me? I pressed.
Good, then we're on the same page,
he said, suspicion on his face.
I didn't want to feed into your delusions, Riley, otherwise I'd have started with that,
he admitted, blunt as ever. I expect nothing less, Tex. Continue, please, I responded.
She asked what type of person you were,
he went on.
Told her you were troubled, but your core didn't match the exterior. You might look like a degenerate and act like one sometimes, but you'd be a fool not to trust him.
He paused.
I could tell she wanted to know about your entertainment lifestyle, which I still disapprove,
he added, never missing a chance to lecture. Interesting, I said coolly. She ask anything else? I inquired.
Nope. She pretty much got her answer, I guess. I was busy, moved on to other customers, didn't see her after that,
he finished. I sat there in shock, fighting to keep my composure, poker-faced. The weight of this information crushed me. I wasn't losing my mind, or at least it didn't seem like I was. If that was Lila, Adam had actually spoken to her. The one question I needed to ask was the one I was most reluctant to voice. After what felt like an eternity, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the vial of red dust. I set the vial down on Adam's desk, its clink reverberating unnaturally loud in my mind.
What's this?
Adam asked, his tone laced with curiosity. Dust, I replied simply. From the desert, I added.
No red desert around here. How far did you ride?
He asked, a faint chuckle in his voice. Not far, I assured him. He glanced up from the vial, making reluctant eye contact, his expression weary, as if bracing for a long night. I'd like your opinion, Tex, on what the hell this is, I said.
Looks like red dirt or sand,
he answered, a trace of annoyance creeping in. Open it. It won't bite, I promise, I said, a slight chuckle escaping me. Reluctantly, Adam leaned forward, snatched the vial from across the desk, and eased back into his chair, clutching it to his chest. His eyes never left mine, his face a mask of stone. He cracked the lid open and shook the container, studying its contents with quiet interest. His eyebrow arched a few times, his expression shifting like an old analog gauge. After a moment he sniffed it, then sniffed again, certainty settling on his features.
Blood and patchouli,
he declared with unwavering confidence.
Where'd you find this?
He asked, his voice now tinged with the same intrigue I'd always imagined he and my father shared on a case. It's not important, I said coolly. What makes you say blood and patchouli? I pressed, my interest piqued by the patchouli revelation.
Kid, I've smelled enough old blood in my time to recognize it anywhere, and damn near every grass-smoking hippie in the 60s reeked of patchouli. Another scent you don't forget. Smelled bad then. This smells worse now. Please tell me you didn't.
I cut him off. No,
Good to know you didn't kill some burnout in the desert.
he said, half joking.
Seriously, Riley, this isn't a joke. Where'd you get it?
He pressed again, dead serious. I told you, in the desert, on my sabbatical. There's not much out there, but you can't miss it, I stated.
It must have been out there a long time.
He mused.
This blood's old, but not as ancient as you're implying, Riley.
He added, his gaze piercing through me. I'm not implying anything, Tex, I responded.
Bullshit, kid.
He shot back, his eyes rolling.
You want me to believe this is evidence of your ghost?
He snapped. I wanted your opinion. I really didn't know what it was or how long it's been there, I retorted with equal venom. I said the accident was a long time ago. I didn't say how long ago, I clarified. In your opinion, how long do you think it's been there? I asked, genuinely curious. The frustration eased from his face as he sniffed it again.
A year, maybe a little longer,
He answered.
Blood doesn't hold its scent much past that, especially in the desert.
He finished.
This doesn't prove your story, kid. It only proves you found smelly dirt in the desert.
He stated bluntly. I wasn't looking to prove my story, Adam, I said sincerely. I needed to know what it was, nothing more. I added honestly. It's getting late, I began, but he cut me off.
You want me to look at the tapes, don't you?
He said matter-of-factly. No, she's probably just some chick I'll run into eventually. Or maybe never. No big deal, I said passively, on purpose. I knew he wouldn't resist the chance to prove it was a real woman. Right on cue, he replied.
Good, I've got better things to do.
A glint of opportunity in his eyes. I know you do, Tex, I said with a smile, daring him to take the bait.
Evelyn's already gonna have my ass for getting home so late.
He sighed, more an excuse to end our talk tactfully. Tell her I say hello and apologize for keeping you from her, I said with a warm smile.
Tell her yourself, unless you want her to stay mad at you for not coming around.
He grumbled, annoyed. She can't stay mad at me. Not possible, I said, flashing a wide smile.
Maybe not, but I can and will if you don't find someone to settle down with,
he said with gruff concern. You know that's not fair, Adam, I started, but he cut me off.
Don't give me that shit, kid. You got more to offer than you think, and you'll find someone worthwhile, God willing,
he stated. Another sheet of paper fed out of his printer as he finished, derailing his train of thought. He smacked the printer in frustration. Can you hand me that sheet? I asked, half expecting some message to be printed on it. He looked at me, confused, but complied. I took it and grabbed a pen. You got an envelope, Tex? I asked. He opened a drawer, pulled one out and handed it to me. Thanks, I said, beginning to write. Once finished, I folded the paper, slipped it inside and sealed it.
What's this about?
He asked, concern in his voice as I handed it to him. Information I shouldn't have, I replied. He flipped the envelope over, reading the title I'd written. Open when you're ready to see. His gaze fixated on it, weighing heavy in his hand. Good night, Adam, I said, rising from my chair. I continued, turning towards the door. I'll let myself out, tell Evelyn I'll stop by in a few days to catch up. I glanced back before exiting his office. Adam still sat there, envelope in his hand, lost in his thoughts.
Night, Riley,
he said, his eyes never lifting off the envelope. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my Ranger, my heart still pounding, even though the adrenaline had long wore off. There was still one more man I needed to talk to, a man I long respected from a distance, mostly out of fear. The shop door groaned as I forced it open, the sharp scent of oil and metal flooding my senses like a distant memory. I flipped on the lights, the hum of fluorescence cutting through the stillness as I stepped inside, the Ducati lurking in the corner. A silent sentinel I don't yet understand. It's been a week since Lila's voice faded, since she whispered on the wind and vanished into the turn signal flash, leaving me with nothing but echoes and a vial of red dust that reeks of blood and patchouli. I tossed my keys onto the workbench, the clatter slicing through the empty shop. I set the vial beside them, its weight a quiet burden I can't ignore. Adam's words gnawed at me. Blood and patchouli. A year. Maybe a little longer. Too recent for Lila's '68 crash. So what is it? A ghost's remnant? A fresh wreck? Or my mind unraveling? I pressed my fingers to my temples, the ache behind my eyes, a steady throb. "Get it together, Riley," I murmured, the mantra I've clung to all week. I glanced at the new shop radio. Silent. No static, no whispers. For 7 days, I've waited for Lila to reach out. Through the air, the desert, anything. But there's nothing. Just me, alone with my doubts, riding the Ducati back to the crash site she showed me. Finding only more red dust, its stale scent clinging to me like a shadow I can't shake. Is she gone? Finally free of the Norton? I've held the dust like a lifeline, proof to keep me sane. But now I wonder if it's somehow keeping her at bay, blocking the pull that let her manifest beyond the Norton's grip. The Norton is lost, returned to its owner, who refused to sell despite my pleas. I fixed it, freed Lila from its hold, but its absence leaves me adrift with unresolved questions. That bike was a puzzle, a trouble bike to solve, a way to steady my hands and mind. Now, with it gone, I feel like a rider with no path. I've always been good at mending, bikes, problems, chaos. But this, I don't know where to turn. I think of Dad, how Adam said he knew things he shouldn't, how his perception consumed him. Adam called it a faucet that wouldn't close. Mom was pure Navajo, taken by a car accident when I was around 10, back when we all still lived in Texas. All that remains of her are foggy memories of those desert visits with family and a faint hum of her voice in my dreams. Neither Adam nor Dad ever spoke ill of her. They both respected her and my grandfather deeply. Dad was never the same after she died. Was there more to their bond than love? I never fully grasped their relationship. It always seemed beautiful, yet troubled somehow. Not fully belonging, I understand that now. Most assume I'm white, maybe Spanish, but an unspoken truth lingers. I'm not one of them. Did the world see their love the same way? I sink to the shop floor, back against the workbench, staring at the vial, now in my hand. Despite being alone and lost, there's still a place I can turn for answers. My grandfather, Mom's father, a Navajo medicine man, and tribal elder. I've always respected him, feared him even, with those eyes that seemed to pierce my soul. I haven't seen him since those childhood trips. Have cut myself off from my Navajo half because it never felt right. Dad's rejection, Adam's skepticism, my own need to stay grounded shaped me, and I buried it deep. But with Lila silent and the dust in my hand, it begins to click. Grandfather might know the curse of this land, my visions or hallucinations, but facing him terrifies me more than Adam's doubts. I rose from the floor, walked to the Ducati, and traced a hand along its tank, its cool steel steady yet mute. Has Lila bonded to my guardian? Is it protecting her as I suspected it would a week ago? Without her voice, it feels like cold metal again. I need her, need a path. But the shop's silence presses down, thick as desert heat. I've spent the week running, riding, searching, hiding, but I can't escape the truth. I'm half Navajo, torn between worlds I've never understood. Grandfather could unravel the dust's secret, the curse of this land. But to reach him, I'll have to confront the heritage I've fled. I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm out of roads to ride. I flick off the shop lights, intending to head to bed, but I feel compelled to linger in the darkness, defeated. The radio hummed to life, playing a Billy Idol song from the 80s, Eyes Without a Face. But it wasn't Billy Idol. It's a woman's voice, haunting, more chilling than the original. A cover, I thought, later learning it was Marceau, a far superior version compared to the mediocre original. Funny how that works sometimes, though that's beside the point. I stood in the dark, listening, as fractal shapes danced in my vision. Nice, I mused. Flashbacks from my psychedelic days, probably. The lyrics come in waves, some dull, others sharp, with clarity and vibrancy, like a message I needed to hear. It's metaphor, but I understood. The message was, I'm all out of hope, could bring a fall when I'm far from home. I spent so much time believing all the lies. It makes me mad at truth for loving what was you. Eyes without a face, got no human grace, your eyes without a face. Now all I can do, love what was once so alive and new. I'd better realize. Then the radio fell silent, plunging the shop into darkness. Clarity struck me. A map, even if the pieces didn't fully fit. Truths I cling to are incomplete. I need to return home. Home is my grandfather. Truth lies there. It's Lila reaching out, eyes without a face, no human grace. She's been watching me all week, never manifesting. I have to find the truth before my fall. It's decided, I thought. The Ducati and I will ride to him in the morning, seeking truth, whatever it is. The Ducati rumbled beneath me as I rode out at dawn, the desert stretching wide and unforgiving under a pale sky. The road hummed with a rhythm I've known since leaving Texas, a pull that's kept me moving, searching. My grandfather's house was only a 2-hour ride away, yet guilt began to weigh heavily on my soul. I hadn't seen him since my mother's funeral, and long-buried memories surged as I rode. Her painted face, wrapped in a ceremonial blanket. My grandfather, my father, Adam, all dusted with ashes. The horse that carried her, the same one they sacrificed to carry her spirit to the afterlife. The men who performed the burial rites. The 3 days of fasting and solitude. How had I let all this fade from my mind? The vial of red dust jostled in my jacket pocket, its weight a constant reminder of Lila's silence and the questions trailing me like dust clouds. But now I head toward the reservation, toward my grandfather. The decision settled in me last night, born from that haunting song, and I can't turn back. The landscape shifted as I neared the reservation, the familiar desert giving way to scattered homes and the faint outline of sacred land I vaguely recalled from childhood. My stomach tightened. Those desert visits with Mom flickered in my mind, half-remembered laughter blending with the hum of her voice. I never belonged here either. Not really. The people I passed, Navajo faces, weathered by time and tradition, glanced my way, their eyes lingering a moment too long. I felt it again, that unspoken truth. I'm not one of them. Most see me as white, Spanish, or the occasional exotic. But here, among my mother's people, the disconnect cuts deeper. I'm a nomad, caught between worlds, riding a black horse that feels more like home than this soil ever did. I pulled up to a modest home, its adobe walls merging with the earth, and cut the engine. The silence rushed in, thick as the heat. My grandfather stepped out, his presence commanding yet calm, those piercing eyes locking onto mine. He spoke, his voice rolling in Navajo, words I couldn't fully grasp, but they stirred something buried. Ya'atiye shiye di hugan shidi ah, he said, language rough and unfamiliar on my tongue. I caught home amid the flow, a word that echoed from childhood, but the rest slipped away, lost to years of neglect. I'd feared him since those trips, since his gaze seemed to see through me. I hadn't seen him since I'd buried my Navajo half deep, shaped by Dad's rejection and Adam's skepticism. But now, with the dust in my pocket and Lila's absence pressing on me, I felt exposed. He was expecting me. I sensed it in his steady stance, in the way he studied me without surprise. I dismounted, my boots kicking up dust, and met his gaze. "I don't know if this is home," I admitted, the words heavy with doubt. "I can't even understand you." He nodded, a quiet acceptance in his eyes. Not disappointment, but an expectation long held. "You've strayed far, Riley, but the blood remembers. Come inside. We have much to uncover," he said. I hesitated, the Ducati's cool frame still under my hand, my guardian, silent now. The reservation felt alien, yet faintly familiar, a place I'd fled but couldn't escape. I'll follow him in, I thought, seeking answers to the dust, the curse, the visions, or hallucinations that haunted me. Truth lies here, but the road that brought me still called. Inside, the air carried the scent of sage, earth, and other unfamiliar traces I couldn't place. We sat across from each other, and after a long, uneasy silence, he spoke. "You are seeking Hojo," he said, his voice steady. I couldn't respond. I wasn't entirely sure what he meant. Guilt twisted in my gut again, a familiar ache. "Harmony, Riley. You are searching for it," he explained in English. "No," I replied, shaking my head. "I'm seeking truth. I have questions that need answers," I continued, my voice firm but uncertain. "Yes, Riley, harmony, that is the truth you seek." His gaze pierced straight into my soul as he spoke, an intensity I remembered from childhood. It was unsettling, to say the least. In his presence, there was nowhere to hide, not even in my own mind. "Relax, Riley. Everyone fears the doctor, but there's no reason to. We don't bite," he said, a well-earned smirk tugging at his lips, followed by a soft chuckle, likely honed over years of knowing how intimidating he could be. "How is harmony truth?" I asked, my tone humbler, my shoulders easing. He stared at me, through me, for what felt like an hour. "You are in great conflict, Riley," he finally stated. How did he know anything about me? We hadn't seen each other in years. Sure, anyone who looked at me could see I was troubled, especially lately, but his matter-of-fact tone suggested he knew far more than he should. "First things first," he said, noting the discomfort on my face. "Adam called me last night, concerned about you." He paused, either for effect or to let the revelation sink in. Before I could even attempt to respond, he continued, "Yes, we speak frequently about you, about other things as well. I've known Adam for a long time. He does many things to help the reservation. Does that surprise you?" he said and asked, fully aware that it did. "What?" was the only response I could muster, still reeling in shock. "Why do you think he moved closer to here from Texas?" he asked, blunt as ever. "There are many things you do not know or fully understand yet, Riley." I just sat there, jaw likely on the floor, with nothing to say in response. Adam, such a skeptic, still tied to the reservation, and my grandfather, long after my mother's and father's deaths. "Why?" I blurted out, utterly confused. "Adam is a man of great honor, Riley. We do not always see eye to eye, share the same beliefs, or seek the same truths, but there is a mutual respect, a harmony. Did you know your father saved his life? Of course you didn't. A man of honor like Adam pays his debt without question or validation from others, he explained, pausing to let me digest the weight of his words. My father saved Adam's life? That was something I had never heard, not from Dad, not from Adam. It would certainly explain his paternal guidance toward me after Dad died, but the reservation? That made no sense. Dad was never part of it. Adam's government connections and law enforcement experience implied protection, which also didn't add up. Not since he retired years ago. Why? What debt? I asked, genuinely bewildered. He didn't answer immediately. He just stared through me again. But this time it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt calming, as if he shared in my confusion. I don't know what debt he placed upon himself. You'll have to ask him, he responded, his tone calm and soothing. Your father never placed one upon him, but I suspect he knew it was your father's abilities that saved him and where they came from, he continued gently, easing my turmoil further. That made sense. It sounded like Adam, a true salt-of-the-earth man of God. He lived on honor and duty, but I knew there was more to be said about it. I know nothing about my dad's abilities. I only know whatever he had drove him mad enough to take his own life, I stated, craving the truth. My grandfather rose from his seat without a word. He retrieved a small glass from a table and approached me, extending his hand to offer it. It is time for medicine, Riley, he said, as I slowly took the glass from him. What's in it? I asked, a flicker of concern in my voice. Harmony, he stated, turning back to the table. I sniffed it. The smell was foul, likely tasting even worse. Answers for the both of us, he continued, now facing me, a glass of his own in hand. He chanted in a whisper, words I couldn't understand even if I could hear them clearly, then drank the contents in one swift motion. He smiled, warm and inviting, as he gently set his glass back on the table. Drink, Riley. Trust me, trust the medicine. Let go of your doubts and fears forever, he stated with a confidence I'd felt with Lila a week before. His words haunted me. Had I heard them before? Was that how I knew what to say to her? I looked down at the glass, hesitation gone, and drank it down in one large gulp. I've had worse, I thought, as I placed the glass on the arm of my chair, the bitter taste lingering on my tongue. The effects came swiftly, a creeping warmth spreading through my limbs. But it wasn't just physical. My vision shimmered at the edges, colors bleeding into fractals. Vivid reds and golds pulsing like a heartbeat against the sage-scented air. Whispers filled the room. Not just my grandfather's chants, but voices layered beneath, speaking in Navajo, English, all at once. Yet I caught fragments of each, as if my mind had cracked open to receive them. The auditory chaos grounded me, a tether to the ritual, but the deeper shift within my head stole my breath. My thoughts unraveled and rewove themselves. Threads of ideas I'd never grasped before weaving together with startling clarity. I thought of Lila, the red dust, the curse of the land, my father's madness, my mother's songs, all at once. Not as disjointed pieces, but as a single, intricate pattern. Neural pathways I didn't know existed flared to life, my mind expanding to hold multiple concepts in perfect coherence. I reasoned through the connections effortlessly. The dust wasn't merely a remnant, it was a thread, tied to some ancient ritual my grandfather had guarded, a balance against the industry of lost souls that plagued this land. My own sensitivity, buried for years, stirred, hinting at a gift I'd suppressed. The gateway widened, and I received flickers of knowledge I shouldn't have. Visions of ceremonies long past, my grandfather's presence in my mind, not as words, but as a guiding pulse, whispering of my people's harmony with the earth, now fractured by industry. Yet it wasn't just clarity, it was a strain. My strengths emerged, my intuition, my capacity to absorb this flood of information, sharper than I'd ever known. But my weaknesses gnawed at me, my fear, my disconnection. The years of fleeing had left me half attuned. I teetered on the edge, the gateway threatening to overwhelm me if I couldn't steady myself. My grandfather watched me, his piercing eyes unblinking, seeing it all. "Your mind is strong, Riley," he said, his voice cutting through the psychedelic haze. "You receive more than most could endure. Your mother's Navajo spirit flows in you, attuned to the unseen, but you've resisted it too long. You're not fully open. The ceremony will guide you." He paused, his gaze softening. "There is more. Your father, he carried a heritage you must know." The words hit like a thunderclap. My father was half Apache? Before I could process, another wave crashed over me. The gateway flung wide and a torrent of stimulus flooded in. Visions of warriors on horseback, Apache chants blending with Navajo hymns. My father's face contorted in anguish as he fled the reservation, the red dust swirling like blood in the air. Revelations piled on. His abilities weren't madness, but a seer's gift, passed through Apache blood, a legacy I inherited. The land's curse stemmed from the industry of lost souls, and I carried the weight of that disharmony in my own fractured identity. My mind reeled, neural pathways blazing as I grasped it all at once. But it was too much. I staggered, overwhelmed, my breath ragged, the room spinning as the fractals deepened into a chaotic whirl. He rose, steadying me with a hand on my shoulder. "Breathe, Riley. The medicine reveals what you are. The blood remembers, even when you forget." He stepped back, his demeanor shifting to one of quiet resolve. "It is time for the ceremony," he said, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "The ritual will bring you Hojo, to discover who you truly are." He led me outside, the desert night cool against my flushed skin. A small circle of stones awaited, smudged with sage and cedar, the air thick with their sacred scent. He handed me the vial of red dust, its contents glowing faintly under the starlight. "This dust," he explained, "is a bridge to your past, to the harmony you've lost. We will reclaim it tonight, for you." He began to chant, Navajo words I couldn't understand, but felt in my bones, his voice rising and falling like a wind across the dunes. I poured the dust into the center of the circle, as he instructed, and the air shifted, charged with a deep resonance. The medicine's effects surged again, but this time I was ready. My mind opened fully, the gateway no longer a threat, but a path to myself. I saw my own history, my mother's Navajo spirit in her songs, my father's Apache blood and my restless nomadism, the white world I'd clung to in my mechanical focus. They weren't separate. They were me, woven together in a harmony I'd never understood until now. My intuition, my sensitivity, my seer's gift. They weren't burdens, but strengths, pieces of who I truly was. The fear and disconnection melted away, replaced by a clarity that anchored me. I spoke words I didn't know, a blend of Navajo and Apache, my voice steady as I claimed my identity, no longer running from it. My grandfather nodded, his eyes glistening with pride. "You found it, Riley. Hojo. The harmony you sought, the truth of who you are." He smiled gently, adding, "The harmony is the choice to embrace all parts of you, Riley, to partner with them rather than battle them, or surrender wholly to one alone." The circle of stones glowed faintly, then dimmed, the air lighter than before. I stood there, no longer a nomad adrift, but whole. My true self awakened, my next purpose clear. The next day, I found myself within the confines of a humble earthen sweat lodge. The echoes of my grandfather's modified blessing way ceremony from the previous day and night still reverberating in my mind. It had been only yesterday, yet it felt like an eternity had passed. My brain had bounced off its rev limiter for far too long. I now lay drained, sapped of all vitality, leaving me lightheaded and adrift. The lodge's intense heat enveloped me, a suffocating embrace that seemed to dissolve the boundaries of my body. Yet within that haze, I felt the threads of my multi-layered heritage: Navajo spirit, Apache blood, Anglo-pragmatism, woven together in perfect harmony, no longer at war within me. My skin bore the remnants of the ceremony, painted symbols in ochre and black, adorned with beads and silver jewelry, gifted by the elders during the rituals that had stretched until dawn. The weight of the adornments grounded me, a tether to the earth, as my mind slipped further into the unknown. Time ceased to exist in that lodge, its concept unraveling like smoke caught in a gust. I sat cross-legged, slipping in and out of consciousness, my body heavy yet weightless, as though some unseen force had injected me with a slow-dripping elixir. It wasn't the sharp intensity of the medicine from the night before. This was a gentler unraveling, a slowed-down remix of visions and revelations, seeping into my bones through gradual absorption, followed by a quiet understanding. What I saw weren't mere dreams. They were vivid, tangible, shared experiences of my peoples, Navajo, Apache, and Anglo, spanning the distant past and bleeding into the present. I lived their strength, their moments of weakness, their struggles etched in blood and dust, their victories carved into the land and their defeats. I felt what they feared, shadows that loomed beyond the firelight, unseen forces whispering in the dark, and what gave them strength: the unyielding bond to the earth, the songs that carried their spirits forward. In fleeting moments of awareness, I glimpsed my grandfather or other elders, their silhouettes blurred by the heat, their chants a low, rhythmic hum that seemed to pulse with the lodge's heartbeat. When full consciousness finally returned, it was cold and dark, a stark contrast that jolted my senses. Through the cracks of the lodge, I saw the warm glow of a fire outside, its flickering light bathing the interior in an amber haze, as though the walls themselves were breathing with the flames. I became hyper-aware of the desert symphony, the crackle of the fire, the faint howl of a distant wind, the whispers of my grandfather's chanting, weaving through it all like a thread. Rising from my seated position, my limbs unsteady but resolute, I stepped out of the lodge. My grandfather sat alone by the fire, his figure illuminated by the dancing flames, his voice a rhythmic whisper directed into the heart of the blaze. I sat across from him, the warmth and glow of the fire soaking into my chilled skin, a comfort that felt like coming home. Within the flames, I saw visions, distorted yet decipherable shapes of faces, landscapes, symbols, shifting like memories I couldn't quite grasp. I watched, in trance, for what felt like moments, but could have been hours, until they faded, along with my grandfather's voice. I looked up from the flames, meeting his gaze. He was already watching me, his eyes steady and knowing. 5 days, Riley, he said, his voice calm and gentle, answering the question I hadn't yet voiced but burned in my mind. I'm starving, I rasped, my throat raw as sandpaper, the words scraping their way out. He smiled, a quiet understanding in his expression, and motioned with his head and hand to the side. My gaze followed, landing on a drop-off, a cliff or bluff, its edge barely visible in the darkness. I stood, my body protesting with each movement, staggering slightly in my weakened state as I walked toward it. Below, a body of water shimmered faintly in the moonlight. A creek, a pond. I couldn't tell in the dark. Perhaps 20 feet down. I glanced back at my grandfather, his hand still outstretched toward the edge, and he nodded, a silent encouragement. Turning back to face the void, I leapt. The wind rushed past me as I fell, a biting cold that sharpened my senses, and then I plunged into the water. The shock was ecstasy, every receptor in my skin igniting at once, the icy embrace enveloping me completely. The water was refreshing, a deep cleansing that washed away the lingering haze of the lodge, purifying my body and spirit, as if the earth itself were absolving me of my past conflicts. In that submerged stillness, I slipped into another universe, a realm where time dissolved and the boundaries of my mind expanded beyond the physical world. I lingered there, lost in its embrace for what felt like an eternity, minutes stretching into an unknowable void, unwilling to leave its otherworldly serenity. When I finally resurfaced, gasping for air, I heard faint shouts from the edge of the water, an elder's voice tinged with alarm, as if he'd feared I'd drowned. A laugh escaped me, raw and unrestrained. "That was amazing," I called over to him, my voice echoing over the water, a testament to the exhilaration that still pulsed through me. He stood at the edge, lantern in hand, his expression softening as he motioned for me to follow. "Come, Riley. You must eat," he said simply. I hauled myself from out of the water, the frigid night air gnawing at my skin, as I trailed him up a path that led back to the fire, where my grandfather remained seated. The flames roared and sputtered, casting wild, dancing shadows across the desolate desert expanse, their glow etching deep lines into his weathered face, his eyes gleaming with a reflective intensity as he tracked my approach. Nearby stood an older woman, one of the many elders whose fleeting presence had haunted my fragmented recollections of the past several days. Through the ceremony and the sweat lodge, her form a familiar yet ethereal silhouette against the firelight. She cradled a rolled horse blanket in her arms, her warm, comforting smile laced with a playful glint in her eyes, as if my drenched, disheveled state struck her as oddly endearing, almost cute. She murmured a few words in Navajo, their meaning crystallizing in my mind as a gift, and she extended it toward me. A downward glance revealed my predicament. Clad only in sodden boxer shorts, my body quaking and exposed, my legs buckled beneath me, fingers quivering from the cold. The exhaustion of 5 days without food, the relentless heat, and the plunge's jarring shock. With a sheepish nod of thanks, my cheeks burning with embarrassment, I draped the blanket around myself, its coarse wool texture, a rough but welcome embrace against the chill. I settled across from my grandfather once more, the fire's heat seeping deep into my marrow, my heightened senses still thrumming from the lodge's visions and the water's embrace. The blaze seemed to pulse with life, its flickering light conjuring fleeting shapes, faces, cryptic symbols, the faint, unmistakable outline of a woman I knew all too well. "Grandfather," I started, my voice finding a steadier cadence despite the rasp clawing at my throat. "The woman in the flames. Her name is Lila. She's still here, isn't she? In the dust?" My words lingered in the air, heavy and unresolved, the fire's crackle filling the void. He nodded, slowly, his gaze piercing despite the flames writhing between us, never wavering from mine. as if measuring the depth of what he might unveil. "Yes, and no, Riley," he replied, his voice low and deliberate, burdened with a truth aged by time. "The red dust you found is a combination. The essence of the afterlife Lila should have journeyed to, mingled with the remnant of our rituals. We used ceremonial red sand, infused with her perfume, patchouli among its scents, and sacrificial blood to strengthen her fight against being consumed by the Norton. Her spirit is tethered to that dust, a remnant of something that no longer fully belongs to this world." He elaborated, then pressed on. "Her spirit could not rest, could not pass into the next world. When we found her body, weeks after her death, she had already been bound to an evil spirit, the Norton. Why she still lingers is unknown. She is free to pass now, yet she fights to remain." He fell silent, prodding the fire with a stick, unleashing a spiral of sparks into the night. There are places, crossroad places, where the worlds bleed into each other. The dust marks one of those breaches, a fingerprint of her struggle where she waits. I leaned forward, my heart hammering as fragments of understanding began to lock into place. I showed Adam the dust. "He knew what it was, didn't he?" I declared, my tone more a statement of conviction than a question. Grandfather's lips twitched into a faint smile, a glimmer of something enigmatic flickering in his eyes. "Adam and I have known things for a long time, grandson," he said, his tone cryptic yet steady. "We've been watching those places, keeping the balance. But you're seeing it now, feeling it. She needed you to free her of her bonds, the Norton." His voice deepened with concern. "To sacrifice you for her freedom, a trade. Trapped spirits will often sacrifice others when necessary. You were reckless, Riley. You are lucky to still be here." A trace of anger roughened his words as he finished. The fire flared briefly, as if underscoring his warning and her latent threat. And in its glow, I saw her again, Lila's silhouette, her form woven from swirling red dust, her eyes pleading. I turned back to my grandfather, a blend of clarity and unease settling over me like a shroud. "Yes, she was going to sacrifice me," I stated, my words an attempt to soothe his worry. He responded with a raised eyebrow, a flicker of curiosity etching across his face as he leaned forward slightly. His eyes narrowed, his interest not in the fact of her intent, but in how I had evaded her snare, how I hadn't succumbed to her lure. "Tell me everything, Riley," he demanded, a grave concern threading his tone. "I will, grandfather, but can we eat first? I need you to tell me everything about Adam, the crossroads you mentioned," I replied, my voice still hoarse and strained. "Of course," he answered, a warm smile breaking through, as if the urgency of the moment had momentarily eclipsed his awareness of my days without food. It mirrored my own single-minded focus, that hyper-attuned state I knew all too well. Yet there was more. He looked forward to answering my questions, a subtle eagerness I could sense beneath his calm exterior. A few days had passed since the fire-lit conversation with my grandfather, the exact count lost to the fog of deep, dreamless sleep and the slow restoration of my strength. I'd eaten ravenously that night, simple, hearty food, prepared by the elders. Fry bread, mutton stew, and blue corn mush, each bite anchoring me, pulling me back from the brink of exhaustion. My body had demanded rest after the meal, the toll of the 5-day fast, the lodge's searing heat, and the plunge's shock finally overtaking me. I slept in a small hogan on the reservation, its earthen walls and cedar beams a sanctuary of stillness, the desert's rhythmic whispers lulling me into oblivion. When I finally woke, my mind felt honed, the haze of the ceremony lifted, replaced by a crystalline clarity. My muscles still bore a dull ache, a lingering echo of the ordeal, but I felt whole, my Navajo spirit, Apache blood, and Anglo-pragmatism no longer clashing, their harmony a steady rhythm within me. It was early morning when I emerged from the hogan, the sun just cresting the horizon, bathing the desert in hues of gold and amber. The air was crisp, laced with the faint scent of sage and wood smoke from lingering fires. My packed bag rested at my feet. I knew it was time to leave, to ride out and face whatever lay ahead, but not before I got the answers I needed. My Ducati waited nearby, its black frame gleaming in the dawn's light, a steadfast companion for the journey to come. As I walked toward the edge of the reservation, where the dirt path met the open expanse, my boots crunching softly on the sandy earth, my mind churned over the conversations of the past few days. I had told grandfather everything about Lila, her initial intent to trap me in the Nortons' grasp, a desperate trade for her freedom, and her reluctant shift after realizing who I truly was, her fight to save me instead. His relief had been palpable, though a shadow of grave concern still clung to his expression. I'd tried to reassure him, emphasizing my understanding of women as my saving grace. He'd given me that familiar, disapproving look, one I'd grown used to from Adam, before replying with a slight grin, "Nobody knows women, Riley, not even women." I'd laughed, conceding, "Fair enough. I understand women well enough then." Those days had been a balm, reconnecting with him, observing our shared traits, our humor often mirroring each other in tone and delivery. The tension that once hung between us had dissolved. He still intimidated me, but it was different now, more a quiet awe than fear. He'd also spoken at length about the mixing of cultures through bloodlines, unraveling why I'd never felt I belonged anywhere. On the surface, it was the obvious, visible differences that unsettle others, but the true reason ran deeper, beyond the erosion of cultural identity and traditions. Blood carries memories, he'd said, encoded with information that shapes a person's spirit, soul, essence, whatever you call it. In me, those memories clashed, carrying conflicting impulses that bred turmoil and conflict within. People crave an identity, a foundational framework to ground them, but I'd only ever looked at the surface, missing what truly set me apart. Physically, yes, I was different, but fundamentally, I was a unique fusion. His concern, my father's concern, and Adam's had always been which traits would manifest in me. With no blueprint to guide them, they could only wait, as lost as I'd been, until the right moment for guidance arrived. My rite of passage, so to speak. My three heritages had converged at their maximum potential all at once, a rare alignment. In my blood ran my father's Anglo-pragmatism, an investigative mind, a mechanical aptitude, a mirror to Adam's own traits. I shared his knack for understanding machines, a talent grandfather revealed went deeper than skill. Even machines have a spirit, he'd explained, just like the spirits that cross into our world. Some benevolent, some malevolent, others indifferent, merely serving their purpose. My nomadic Apache blood fueled my restless urge to roam, my lack of roots always at odds with my father's grounded life, and my mother's Navajo blood gifted me the ability to tap into the unseen, visions, a profound connection to things, even machines, ironically, making me a better mechanic through that spiritual bond. I reached the edge of the reservation where my grandfather stood, his silhouette framed against the dawn, the weight of our last conversation, still a quiet presence between us. "Grandfather," I said, my voice clear now, the hoarseness erased after days of rest. "I'm ready to hear about Adam and the crossroads you mentioned. I need to know everything before I go." He turned to face me, his eyes steady and knowing, a faint smile tugging at his lips as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "That's not my place to say. That's for Adam to tell you," he replied, his tone matter of fact, though the faint smile on his face widened, a knowing glint in his eyes as if he'd just downplayed a grand adventure to a child, fully aware the destination was a place of wonder like Disney World. A flicker of uncertainty stirred in me. I couldn't tell if I should be thrilled or wary. "Do you have the ritual items?" he asked, referring to the ceremonial sand and a few other elements. some deemed taboo, and rightfully so, in traditional Navajo culture, their inclusion a nod to the hybrid ceremony we'd conducted. "I do," I answered, gratitude threading my voice for the tools I'd been entrusted with. "Your ancestors will guide you once you begin," he reassured, his hand resting firmly on my shoulder, a grounding weight. "You'll make the right decision in the moment, whatever path it takes." His words carried a quiet confidence as he finished. His gaze shifted toward my Ducati, its sleek form waiting patiently nearby, and his smile stretched ear to ear. "Your horse awaits," he declared, a playful pride in his tone. I knew the bike's appeal, its classic lines, modern edge, a seamless blend of style, beauty, and raw power, but I sensed his fascination ran deeper, beyond its surface traits. "What do you see?" I asked, my curiosity genuine, eager to understand his perspective. "Benevolence, Riley. Protection, freedom, a guardian, yet not whole," he replied, pausing before continuing. "A black horse, not traditional, but a horse nonetheless." His words lingered, imbued with meaning I could feel, but not fully grasp. "What would make it whole?" I pressed, seeking clarity. His gaze drifted back to me from the bike, steady and enigmatic. "That is for you to decide," he said, response that answered nothing, yet everything. I nodded, the weight of his words settling in, their meaning clear in their ambiguity. He lowered his hand and began walking back toward his Hogan, the Ducati directly in his path. I watched as he strolled, his pace unhurried, and when he reached the Ducati, he paused. I thought I caught a faint chuckle escaping him, though I couldn't be sure. Then he turned back to face me, his grin as wide as I'd seen in days. "I love it," he said, his voice warm with amusement. "It's perfect," he continued, before turning back toward his Hogan. What the hell was that about? I thought to myself, the moment lingering like a riddle I couldn't yet solve. An hour later, I was riding out of the reservation, the Ducati's engine a steady growl beneath me, my destination locked in. Adam. It was Sunday, so Rusty's would be shuttered. I'd find him at home with Evelyn. Fuck, I muttered aloud, the realization hitting me like a jolt. I'd promised to stop by and see her a few days after my last visit, nearly 2 weeks ago now. From Reaper's Creepers, the unknown retreats and the shadows release you for now. Join us again to drift deeper into the dark.